Love, a base hit into the gap, and they could win it with junior speed to stretch. And the 0-1 pitch on the way to Edgar Martinez. Swung on the line down the left field line for a base hit. Here comes Joy. Here is Junior to third base. They're going to wave him in. The throw to the plate will be late. The Mariners are going to play for the American League Championship. I don't believe it. It just continues. My, oh my. Edgar Martinez with a double. Ripped down the left field line, and they are going crazy at the Kingdom.
Today on Crafting the Call, my oh my, we're talking Dave Niehaus. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Lansing Lugnuts.
And I'm Josh Sushon with the Albuquerque Isotopes, and this is a really special episode for a lot of reasons because Dave Niehaus is a broadcaster who is truly the epitome of someone who has his own style. But in order to give proper perspective about Dave and his life and his style, we decided to bring in one of my old friends, Ken Levine. Welcome to Crafting the Call.
Thanks very much, guys. It's a pleasure to be here and a real pleasure to be talking about Dave Niehaus.
So for Ken Levine, he broadcasted for the Baltimore Orioles, the Seattle Mariners, the San Diego Padres. He also was the host of Postgame Dodger Talk. He had a lot of different co-hosts over the years, including...
Oh, I know, but one in particular was just an anchor. For 3 years, I had to suffer with this guy. Yeah.
Continue the suffering.
So we're going to get into some of Dave's more memorable calls that Jesse and I have picked out because we really like them. But before we do that, Ken, when someone just says, what was it like working with Dave Niehaus? What was it like?
He was my best partner. The Mariners, he was their lead broadcaster since day one. And at one point, he said to me, Kenny, the team has to go 654-0 for me to reach 500. And yet he had a great time. His attitude was, they're not going to send me down to the minors, right? So he loved baseball. He loved describing it. He loved food and the road. And Dave Niehaus just had such a great time. And it was really infectious, certainly for me as partner and for the audience.
One of the things about broadcasting baseball is that there's home runs, there's double plays, there's great catches, and then there's other moments as well. And this is one that we'd like to start off with. That is a other moment.
Now he's got his cap off and throwing his cap down. And loose head bobbing back and forth like a hen, picking up pieces of corn, and now kicks his cap once, misses it twice, kicks it the third time out onto the outfield grass, goes back. The other two umpires joining Larry Barnett out there. The only man, Bill Miller, standing at home plate, while Lou puts on one magnificent show here in Cleveland. Yes, this will make a lot of the highlight reels, and Piniella is absolutely exasperated as he goes over, picks up his hat, and can't hang on to it. Or maybe didn't hang on to it at first, and he kicks it again. As he kicks it on this is the greatest show by Piniella as a Mariner manager. He got distance that time. That was a three-pointer. He's going to kick it all the way to the Mariner dugout. He kicks it again, high into the air.
Ken, what are your thoughts watching that?
Well, Dave was really a wordsmith and loved descriptions. And you put him in a situation like that where he could just go to town, and he was absolutely at his best. I mean, the thing about the really good play-by-play announcers are what happens when it's not just play-by-play. How do you handle situations like that? And Dave was always up for the moment. And again, he's having a great time with that. Okay. He's not furious and angry and calling out the umpire. He sort of sees it for the theater that it is and describes it as such. So it's a combination of the words he uses and also the perspective that he gives to it. And again, when you're with a losing team, there are not a lot of great highlights. You have to cover a lot of ground when nothing is really happening. He told me when he was with the Angels, he was like the number 3 guy with the Angels in the early 70s, and they were owned by Gene Autry at the time. And Gene said to him one night, he says, "Dave, you call a hell of a game. It's not the game I'm watching, but it's a hell of a game."
And it's interesting that you bring that up. There was an interview that I listened to between Dave and Dave Beck. And Dave Beck asked him about the differences between calling TV and calling radio. And the two things that Dave Niehaus said was, and I quoted this, that radio compared to TV makes you tell the truth because people can see it. But he also said, just like you started with, that TV takes away the ability to be a wordsmith because the pictures are showing you. But on radio, all of that is laid before you, just to paraphrase him. So the words are right there. And in your tribute that you wrote to Dave Niehaus and wrote about him, your thoughts on his showmanship that so many other baseball broadcasters don't have. And I think that we see that one showman appreciating the other with Lou Piniella. So Dave's delight is reflected in Ken Griffey Jr.'s delight at all of this in the picture.
Yeah. He really was a wordsmith. I mean, we would be sitting there and again, it's a meaningless game. And, we're in Kansas City and it's 1,000 degrees and a guy hits a pop fly and he'll describe it as a white dot against the black night. And you're going, wow. It's not just pop up to short, that Dave would do that. And he really was a showman. And again, he and I had an awful lot of fun. I remember one time we were doing a game and it's a lousy game and we're behind 8-1 in the 5th inning. And Dave starts talking about Dizzy Dean, who was a former pitcher and then became a broadcaster for CBS doing the Game of the Week with Pee Wee Reese. And he was very colorful, was Dizzy Dean on the air. And he would sometimes sing the Wabash Cannonball. That's what Dave mentioned. And I went on the air and I said, "Do you know the Wabash Cannonball?" And he goes, yeah, I think I do. And I said, "Sing it." "Go ahead, sing it." And he did. He did. And I said, "Look, I am not familiar with the Wabash Cannonball since I'm not 117 years old like you are. But I said, if a listener would send the sheet music, I'll be glad to sing it with you next time." And sure enough, like 5 people sent us sheet music for the Wabash Cannonball. And I brought it up in one of my innings and I said, "Wait, Dave, don't go away yet." We're going to sing the Wabash Cannonball together. And the pitch is fouled away 2-2. And we did. And I made a bit of it that anytime the Mariners got behind by 10 runs, that Dave and I would sing the Wabash Cannonball. It was basically a way of keeping listeners. Oh, they're only down by 8. We got to hang in there. There's a few more innings. And we ended up singing the Wabash Cannonball so often we did not need to refer to the sheet music after a while. But that's the kind of stuff that Dave would do, where he would just go along with stuff and just have a great time. It's like baseball was fun. Like I use the word infectious. And, for Dave, again, he was a throwback. We didn't have that many TV games in Seattle. And for years, people would talk about how they'd get done with dinner and it was a lovely night in the Pacific Northwest, and they would just sit on the back porch and listen to Dave call a game. And it was a very pleasant way of spending an evening.
Well, when it comes to being a wordsmith, nobody described a grand slam quite like Dave. So let's hear one of his most famous grand slam calls.
One more time set, and here comes the 2-2 pitch to Edgar Martinez now. And the fastball swung on and hit the deep center field. Bernie Williams goes back, and it is get out the rye bread and the mustard this time, Grandma. It is a grand salami, and the Mariners lead it 10-6. I don't believe it. My, oh, my.
He absolutely got the most out of that. And I think in Seattle, if a guy hits a grand slam, they still call it a grand salami. That's one of those expressions that sort of grew. It started as grand salami, and then it kind of picked up from there. And over the course of a number of years, it became the 45-second home run call.
I read an interview that he did once where he basically admitted that he was just in a hotel room on the road and he was just trying to think of phrases. He was just trying to think of what would be an interesting way of describing something, and I've kind of always gone back and forth, Ken, in terms of this is just something I want spontaneously to happen. I don't want to script something that I do play by play, but also I want to have something to capture the moment. And so I'm wondering, either for you personally or for you and Dave, how often you guys would just sit around having coffee, before games, on planes, where you just kick around, like what would be a funny phrase that we could come up with and then use it in a game?
No, we never did that. But Dave loved different phrases. Okay, the team bus was always the whippet for him. He would call himself the veteran spieler. That's how he would refer to himself. And I'm trying to think, when we would start the game, one of us, we would basically alternate as to who did the opening. And that was the table setting. And so for Dave, he would say to me, "Well, you got the spoons and the forks tonight." He just loved using different phrases.
Ken, back to the bus and back to what he called himself. And because I'm going to extend this, we talk old school. For years and years, it was the media that affixed nicknames to the players. The media comes up with Stan the Man Musial or the Yankee Clipper, or you can go right on through and say, the media came up with this name for this great player, this name. And there's the old soul of Dave Niehaus, right? Is he's the one coining the nicknames for the Mariners greats. Did you ever see him figure out a good nickname for a player? Just land on that one.
No, I never saw him prepare for it, but like you saw during the fight with Lou Piniella, he was always up to the moment. He was up for the moment rather, and things like that would just pop into his head. He was always looking to be colorful and to be a little different. I mean, his home run call was "It will fly away." I don't know another announcer who ever used that home run call.
Hell, if anyone would want to use it, right? I mean, it's
well, there's that.
All right.
Well, but Ken Korak right now uses something similar, and he will watch it fly. And so you can see how one home run call can lend into the next. Like for Dave, how much was he affected by Harry Carey of his youth? And so it's interesting to me to see that broadcaster influence get passed through the years.
Well, he was influenced by Harry in the sense that Dave grew up in Indiana, and he would listen to Cardinal games on KMOX. The Cardinals flagship had this monster signal, and his family was going to go to St. Louis and go to a game, and he was very excited to actually go to Sportsman's Park and see, the players and the game. And he says, and once he got there, like, they're just a bunch of guys and it's a baseball stadium, but the way Harry Carey made it seem like these were all giant mythical creatures, and this was some, unbelievable edifice. And he goes, it was ballpark and these schmucks running around.
All right, let's get to another one of Dave's calls, because sometimes there's an out that ends a ball game and it's just another win. And then sometimes, even if it's in the middle of the season, it closes the chapter of an era.
Wilson, the native of suburban Chicago. Mesa, a native of the Dominican Republic. The closing battery here at the Kingdome, trying to end it. Now the stretch. The 2-2 pitch on the way to Rusty Greer from Jose Mesa. Swing and a fly ball hit into left center field, and moving over is Hunter on the run. He's got it, and an era is over. The Mariners win it in unbelievable fashion. 5-2. My, oh my.
So the era there, or the era, the ERA, however you want to pronounce it, that was the final game in the Kingdome. And so Dave Niehaus, who had been on the call from day one, it was the middle of the season when they switched over to what was then called Safeco Field. Pretty unusual to start a new ballpark in the middle of the season. Right. But that's Dave on the call, final out of the Kingdome.
And I'm sure through the course of the game, Dave talked a lot about the history of the team in the Kingdome and great moments at the Kingdome and funny things that he remembered at the Kingdome. I'm sure it was a very memorable broadcast from start to finish.
I enjoyed that. What's foremost on his mind is, here's where the battery is from. We're moving. So let's station this sense of place as we head from one place to another.
Yeah, I mean, he really thought of the ball players as human beings, not just bobbleheads. And I think to myself, I wonder how Dave would fare today with all of the analytics. He was immersed in baseball, and I'm sure would work in some of it, but he was very old school. Dave would get to the ballpark at 3:00 every day. On the road, we never took the team bus. Dave and I would grab a cab at 3:00 down in the lobby, grab a cab, and 3:00 meant 2:45. And Dave knew all the scouts. Dave knew all the coaches and managers, and was on the field and in the clubhouse and doing his homework and preparing his notes. And dinners in the press lounge with Dave were always great, because there would always be a couple of scouts. There's Stan Williams or Frank Malzone or one of those guys. And then they would just share baseball stories. It was truly great, just, hanging around Dave.
Ken, from the Kingdome, so that was the final out in the Kingdome. What are your memories of just the sight lines, how high you were, how low you were, just like the angles that you and Dave had for how you could see the field and what it was like just calling the game at the Kingdome?
The sight lines were fine. We were I'd say perfect in terms of our vantage point. The problem was that the lights in the Kingdom, it was just sort of this almost kind of eerie green. It was easy to call a game there because the fences, it was just one padded blue fence, and it was very easy to see whether a ball cleared it or not. But I do remember it was easy to call a game. I had a game once during the pandemic, during the lockdown. I got out some old tapes and digitized them, and hadn't heard them in years and years. And there was one where there was a fly ball hit to deep right center field, and the two outfielders converged, and the ball wedged between two of the pads in the outfield wall. And I was able to see that and call it perfectly on the fly. And I thought, like, well, those lights couldn't have been that bad if I was able to see that. The problem with the Kingdom was there's just no atmosphere. There was just no atmosphere. And especially if you didn't have a big crowd. If you had a big crowd, it was great because it really held the noise and it could be very loud. Seahawk games apparently were great fun. But for us, 10, 12,000 people, it just, you're in a haunted house.
All right, well, that's the perfect segue because the Mariners go from the Kingdom to this gorgeous facility called Safeco Field initially. And I think it's really interesting when you look back on when a player like Ken Griffey Jr., who was such an iconic player in franchise history, and now he's gone, and Dave is the voice of Ken Griffey Jr. And now there's somebody new who's playing center field.
Swinging a fly ball hit into deep center field. Cameron going back to the track, to the wall, makes the leap, and makes the catch! My, oh my! I hate to say it, but it was a Griffey-esque catch. Make it Cameron-esque now. He went and took a home run away from Derek Jeter. A Cameron-esque catch. My, oh my! He receives a standing O.
By the way, shout out to the Seattle Mariners for putting together this Dave Niehaus's greatest calls with his statue and then putting the clip that's in there. I wish that we could say that Jesse and I did this, but we did not. Mariners quite impressive in what they've done in highlighting Dave's calls here, the way they put that together. But Ken, your thoughts on how he describes that call?
That was vintage Dave. Great call. The impact of it, taking away a home run, and then the historical perspective of comparing him to Ken Griffey Jr. Again, it's not just screaming and yelling and making a great call. There was a lot of substance in there. The perspective, the comparison, how it affected the game, all in one call, and very exciting.
A lot of times with these calls, with these episodes, I find myself thinking, what's the choice that I would make in the moment? Or if I could then go back, what would be the choice? And I think there's a part of me, I'll admit, where maybe I wouldn't want to use Griffey's name. Maybe it's almost like this ghost and, I don't want to put extra pressure on Mike Cameron. But hearing the way that Dave called that, I think it's actually really symbolic. It's a passing of the torch. And when we go back and look at this from historical purposes, I don't need to go back to know what the year that was. I know that was the first year that Griffey was gone and Mike Cameron was the new center fielder. And it puts into historical context, this is what we were used to seeing, and this is what we are now seeing. And look at the new guy. And how awesome is the new guy as well? And so this is one of the things I love about this show is that I can think about what I might have done in the past, and now having really studied the craft, how I can change the decisions I'll make in the future based on learning from the greats.
Well, you can
The
hear.
other thing too about Dave and that call is, I'm sure subconsciously Dave was thinking, well, the Mariner fan in the stands was probably making the same comparison. You know, they were always thinking like, oh God, now we have this new guy. We used to have Junior. Wow, that was a catch worthy of Junior. So I think it's Dave's connection with just a regular baseball fan that comes through, that he talks about things that the fans are thinking about.
You can hear Dave with his respect, right? He starts to go Griffey, he stops himself, and then he continues on. And then it morphs into Cameron-esque. But Kendall, what you're saying, in all of these calls, it seems crystal clear that Dave's finger is on the pulse of the Seattle fan, that he is feeling and reflecting exactly what the fan is seeing and feeling.
Yeah, which to me is part of his gift. There was just a real sense of humanity with Dave. And he was always great with the fans. Dave would do lots of banquets, you know, for the Elks Club and various places like that. And in the Kingdom, which was just such a poorly constructed dump, there's only one elevator. There's only one big elevator. So to get up to the booth or to go down to the field, whatever, you had to use this one elevator. And so anytime Dave got in an elevator, there was usually 7 or 8 or 10 fans. And he would be schmoozing with the fans. He enjoyed the interaction with the fans.
Ken, I really appreciated what you started off with, your analysis, in terms of the voice grabs the attention, but let's look at the substance of it. Still, I'm going to ask you a voice question. How many sore throats would Dave get? His voice gets so raw.
And he was smoking, by the way. Well, generally, Dave was very good about reserving his voice for those big moments. And part of what made Dave so popular, he had a great voice, just a beautiful voice. And it was very listenable. You know, you could sit for 3 hours and listen to this guy. There are some voices that may be very exciting, but like after a half hour, you go, enough of this guy already. But Dave was very pleasing to the ear. And, you know, and he would use it sometimes if a pitch was low. He would go, and the 1-1 pitch is low. You know, and he would use that, you know, and then I would give him shit on the air for it. I'd say, you're just doing that because you know I can't. You're just doing that because you know I can't.
Well, one of the other things that makes it so special anytime that a broadcaster like Dave Niehaus has such a lengthy career, he was with the Mariners from 1977 to 2010, is that you have the franchise icon, Junior. He goes away. Then he comes back, and Dave is still the voice for a memorable call.
Fastball at time belted deep to right field. Number 400 is on its way. There it goes. Ken Griffey Jr. has it his 400th home run. Has the Mariner number 613, and everybody, every voice is being used here at the Safeco Field tonight. I almost said the Kingdom because it sounds like the Kingdom. Wow.
Nice save, Dave.
It makes him a human being.
It does. Absolutely. And when Dave passed away, we had a memorial service the next night at Safeco Field, and I was there and spoke. And Ken Griffey at the time, I think he still does, was living in Florida, and he flew across the country to be there for the tribute. Yeah.
And that says a lot about the respect that Griffey had. Also, just understanding the way that these two people are linked, right?
Right.
There's a connection between the plays that Junior made and the soundtrack, which was Ken at times, but more often than not, it was Dave Niehaus for those electrifying moments.
Right. And who is a better promoter of Ken Griffey than Dave Niehaus? And the thing about Dave too is he really appreciated talent. He really appreciated the fact that calling Major League Baseball, you are watching athletes in their prime competing at the highest level. And also for Dave, every game was separate. Even though the team was lousy most of the time, there could be an exceptional night where something interesting happens, where there is some milestone or some feat, somebody hitting for the cycle or pitching a no-hitter. I was there when Chris Bosio pitched his no-hitter, and Dave was just masterful. So it's like every single game he was up for. And like I said, when we would take a cab at 3:00 in the afternoon, we would do that September 15th when the team had been eliminated by the All-Star break. Every broadcast was important for Dave. He never was on autopilot, ever, ever, ever.
All right. Well, perfect segue, because sometimes there is a night in which something special occurs. And a lot of times here on Crafting the Call, Jesse and I have looked at the 9th inning of a no-hitter, of a perfect game. We'll look at the final result of a milestone. But for this week's episode, we want to look back on the first inning and how you set the stage for something that might happen at the very beginning of the broadcast.
Oh, it's a great night to be at the ballpark. Good to see so many loyal Mariner baseball fans here at the Dome tonight, and great to have you with us. Gaylord Perry ready to go on the mound, and with the action, here's Dave Niehaus.
Thank you, Kenny. A very pleasant good evening, everybody. The eyes of the baseball world focused right here at the Kingdome, Seattle, Washington, on this Thursday night, May the 6th, 1982, as Gaylord Perry attempts to become only the 15th man in baseball history to win 300. Willie Randolph steps in, and the first pitch is a fastball in and over for a strike, and we are underway. 0-1 the count. Ken Kaiser calling balls and strikes tonight. Randolph, last Friday night against Perry, had a couple of base hits. He had a line drive to right and an infield hit. The outfield gives him the left center field gap. Perry reaches into that glove, and the 43-year-old right-hander's one-strike pitcher, curve, a bunt attempt, and a miss bunt attempt. Strike two. 0-2 the count on Randolph, hitting at .341 with a couple of home runs and 12 RBIs. Blanche Perry is here, and Gaylord's 19-year-old daughter Amy is here. His other two daughters are back going to the school prom, and his 14-year-old son Jack has 2 baseball games tomorrow and Saturday. So the wife and the 19-year-old daughter in attendance tonight. The 2-strike pitch on the way to Willie Randolph, and the fastball is hit to the right side. A 2-hopper. Jimmy Mailer gets a second hop off the dirt, goes to the bag, 1 away. And here's Ken Griffey, the right.
All right. So I'm going to pause right there because it's the first out of the top of the first inning. And Dave is giving you a lot of information. He is not letting it breathe. It's here we go. I got a lot of information, and here it is.
Well, it's a story. You're setting up a story for what could be a big payoff. The thing that struck me about that sequence was the play call. And it's just a bouncer to the first baseman. And he made a point of saying, taking the second hop off the dirt to distinguish the dirt between the carpet. And it's just that little extra touch that Dave put into that call. And again, it's a routine play.
Fielder. Griffey had no luck against Gaylord Perry Friday night last at Yankee Stadium. He went 0 for 4. Let's remind you that the broadcast is authorized under broadcasting rights granted by the Seattle Mariners Baseball Club solely for the entertainment of our listening audience, and any publication, rebroadcast, or other use of the description and accounts of this game without the express written consent of the Seattle Mariners Baseball Club is prohibited. The Mariners have had outstanding success against the Yankees here in the Kingdome over the previous 5 years. The M's have come out winners 17 times in 26 tries. The ex-Cincinnati Red, Ken Griffey, up there waving at Wood back and forth. Gaylord Perry into the wind. The pitch to Griffey is a change strike on the outside corner, 0-1. The outfield playing Griffey straight away. The infield the same. Manny Castillo, Todd, and Julio Cruz up the middle. Jim Mailer at first base. Bruce Bochy in left. Joe Simpson in center. And Al Cowens is around and right. Gaylord Perry with the strike on Ken Griffey. And the one-strike pitch, and the slider misses low and inside this time. Ball 1. 1 ball and 1 strike. Gaylord Perry, 13-12 lifetime against the New York Yankees. Overall, 299 victories, 241 losses. And, of course, he is 2-2 with the M's. The 1-1 pitch to Griffey, and the curve misses high and outside. Ball 2. 2 balls and 1 strike. The Yankees are struggling a little bit. They've made a couple of deals. Big John Mayberry, of course, in the lineup for the first time. The Toronto Blue Jays receiving Dave Revering and minor league infielder Jeff Reynolds. And Mayberry in the lineup for the first time tonight. Here is the wind in the pitch on the way, and Griffey takes strike 2 call on the outside corner at the knees. 2-2 the count. The Yankees have lost 2 in a row, 3 of their last 5, and they have played poorly at home at Yankee Stadium. They've only won 4 times in 14 outings. 2-2 the count to Ken Griffey. Gaylord Perry into that rocking motion. The big high leg kick, the 2-2 pitch, high, ball 3. 3 balls and 2 strikes. Perry, of course, earlier this year, establishing a new Mariner Club record for most strikeouts in a game as he fanned 13 California Angels. Perry across the bill of that cap, down the side of the ear, getting set for the payoff pitch to Ken Griffey. The North Carolina Peanut Farmers payoff pitch is a fastball hammered to the right side. Cruz has it on the third hop. He'll straighten up and throw him out. A big stretch by Mailer that time.
All right, so we got a couple of routine ground ball outs, and we've definitely heard a lot of the different ways that Dave loved to use vocabulary. What else is coming to your mind, Ken?
Well, Dave was certainly revved up for this game. It's interesting that he got the disclaimer in so early. Usually we didn't get it in that early, but I heard that and I thought, oh, okay, this might be a memorable game, and so get it in early for people who are taping it, so they know that they don't want to, sell that tape and go to prison for 10 years. But like so much little description that he would work in the North Carolina peanut farmer as part of his windup, and just the perspective of the wins and how he did against the Yankees. And I mean, he just covered an awful lot of ground. If you're listening to that broadcast, he sets the outfield alignment for you. There's just so much going on there.
Ken, how much of his prep did he write down? And how much of that about the Yankees, about everything happening, is coming right from his memory?
A lot of that was written down. Dave would, we all had like custom scorebooks, and Dave's had a lot of room for notes, and Dave would fill out all of those notes, and we get the team notes, but what would basically come out of his head and was not written down was all the information that he picked up from scouts, and he picked up from other players and coaches and managers. That was just stuff that he knew and was unique to his broadcast. We all got the notes that said how poorly the Yankees did at Yankee Stadium that year. We all got those notes. But in terms of, a player might be nursing a sore elbow, that sort of thing, that was Dave.
All right, let's get back to Dave Niehaus calling Gaylord Perry's 300th win in the first inning.
2 down for New York, and here is Jerry Mumphrey. The Yankees also adding power-hitting Steve Balboni, calling him up from Columbus of the International League, and sending left-hander Dave LaRoche back down to Columbus to the Clippers of the International League. Jerry Mumphrey hitting at .276. Mumphrey had a couple of base hits off Gaylord Perry. He was 2 for 2 officially Friday night. In the game, the M's came back and won with 3 in the 8th and 2 in the 9th off Rich Gossage. Mumphrey, the switch hitter, batting left-handed, of course. Gaylord Perry with 2 down, nobody on. Into the wind and the delivery on the way to Mumphrey. Strike on the outside corner, 1-1. Perry just floated that ball over the black on the outside edge. Big John is on deck. Mayberry. Perry, the sign from Bud Bullen. The Ancient Mariners, 1-strike pitch, and the fastball this time just barely misses low and inside. 1 ball and 1 strike. Gaylord Perry has won 225 games since his 30th birthday. Only 2 other men have won more games from age 30 on. The 1-1 pitch on the way, and the breaking ball misses low and inside ball, 2-1. Cy Young won 318 games after his 30th birthday. He retired at the age of 44, and Warren Spahn won 277. He retired at the age of 44 after his 30th birthday. Now the wind and the 2-1 pitch on the way, and this time it's a fastball fouled at the plate, and the count of Mumphrey evens at 2 balls and 2 strikes. It was 1 year ago today also that Rene Latchman took over as the skipper of the Mariners, replacing Maury Wills. And Rene's managerial record in the Bigs, 50-62. The M's trying to win their 13th game of the year against 15 setbacks. The Yankees are 9-13. 2 balls, 2 strikes, the count on Jerry Mumphrey. Joe Simpson, the center fielder, pulled over into left center. Gaylord Perry into the wind, the 2-2 pitch on the way, and it's a curve swung on and drilled into the gap in right center field. That's going to go all the way to the wall on 1 hop. It is off the wall. Down to second base goes Mumphrey. He'll make the turn there. He's going to head for third. The throw by Todd Cruz on a hop is not quite in time. Jerry Mumphrey a triple, and those great legs of his just got him in time. As Mumphrey triples into the gap between Simpson and Cowens, he never hesitated. Once he hit the bag at second, and he looked up, that would have cost him. I'm sure that Todd Cruz, that great arm, would have thrown him out. The relay by Simpson to Todd, and Todd threw the ball right on the money, but not quite in time to get Mumphrey. It was short hop by Castillo, just a little bit up the line from third, up toward the first base bag. Here is John Mayberry. John Mayberry will never forget Gaylord Perry. He hit his first.
All right, so I'm going to pause there. There's a couple of things that I just wrote down, Ken. I'm noticing that Dave uses first and last names a lot. He's not just saying Perry. He's saying Gaylord Perry. And I'm wondering, just when you hear that, whether that was his usual style, whether you think he was doing that because this was potentially the 300th game. You don't often hear announcers use first and last names with the frequency that Dave is using here.
Well, most of the time he would use both names, or he would use the nickname. So for Ken Griffey, it was always just Junior. And once Edgar Martinez became kind of a household name, it was always just Edgar. Same thing with like Harold Reynolds. So, yeah, it was like either the first name, a nickname, or the full name.
The Ancient Mariner is so good.
Isn't that fantastic?
So good.
And then he qualifies it by talking about his wins after the age of 30, and then had some perspective. He had to do his homework on that one as to who else had won more games after the age of 30.
Yeah, the overarching theme. We start things off. Here's everybody who's in attendance. All right, now let's switch. Let me introduce you to the Yankees. Here's what's going on with them. Now back to Gaylord. It's really a beautiful laying out the cast and what's important.
Yeah, there's so much that goes on in that inning. I'm anxious to see what happened. I hope he didn't score.
The other thing I was going to say before we get back to the game is that I feel like Dave is starting to slow down a little bit more and let it breathe. And it's very natural that he would be really.
Yeah, he was a little amped up at the beginning. Yep.
Yeah. And I know that's the one thing that I always have to remind myself is slow down at times. And a lot of times I try to think like, well, how do you slow down? And the answer is, well, you just slow down. But I wonder if there's just other cues about like how you get the sense of slow down. And
well, just if I may, real quick, I think you take your cues from the fans. So I think that the fans are amped up to start up this game. And then from that excitement, things are going to dip a little bit. I think that Dave and the fans right now, it's the same kind of heartbeat. All right. And now let's settle in. So that's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
I think there's also the factor that the Mariners had very few games at that point in their history that were very meaningful. You know, they weren't in any kind of a pennant chase. So it's not like the games the last month of the year all held tremendous importance. Most of the time it's like, well, okay, here's this rag arm going tonight. And the Mariners have lost 6 out of 7. And, there's 12 people here in the Kingdom. So to have a night like this, I think Dave, again, he knew the excitement. The fans were tuning in. They were excited. And he was really going to lead them through it.
Yeah, and for people who don't know the history of the Mariners, they started as an expansion team, 1977. This is May 6th, 1982. They did not reach the playoffs for the first time until 1995. So, yeah, what Ken is saying, he didn't have a lot of big games, and this was one of them. And so let's get back to the top of the first inning of a rare, really big, important game for the Mariners.
First American League home run off of Gaylord Perry while a member of the Kansas City Royals, and his first National League home run off Gaylord Perry while a member of the Houston Astros. And here he is at bat for the first time in a New York Yankee uniform. The pitch to John Mayberry, a strike on the outside corner at the knees. 0-1. Mayberry, while with Toronto, hit .273 with a couple of home runs and 3 RBIs. And the Yankees have been hunting for this big man since the beginning of the year. Giving up Dave Revering to get it. Big gap in left center field. Mayberry has hit some gargantuan home runs here at the Kingdom. Gaylord Perry peeking over at third at Mumphrey. The 0-1 pitch to Mayberry. Down low and outside, ball 1. 1 ball and 1 strike. The beginning of a tremendous 11-game homestand here at the Dome. The Yankees tomorrow night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon. And then the Indians in for 3 and the Orioles in for 4. Big gap in left center for Mayberry. The stretch. The 1-1 pitch by Gaylord, and the fastball is taken a bit low. Ball 2. 2 balls and 1 strike. Dave Winfield is on deck. Perry trying to get out of it here in the first. A 2-out triple to Jerry Mumphrey. Perry into the wind. The 2-1 pitch to Big John, and the fastball is pulled foul up the first baseline. Mike Ferraro coaching at first base. Joe Altobelli over at first. Ferraro picks up the ball. Perry staring out toward the outfield, thinking about this pitch. This is the one he wants. 2-ball, 2-strike count on Mayberry. With 2 down, Mumphrey at third, no score, just the start of things, and great to have you with us. Gaylord Perry's first chance at 300 here tonight. The 2-2 pitch to Mayberry, and it's a slider down low and inside, didn't miss by much. All 3 balls and 2 strikes. Perry waiting for Big John, wearing number 28 in that Yankee gray traveling uniform across the bill of the hat. Down the side of that right ear. Mumphrey away from third base. Perry getting set for the 3-2 pitch. And here it is to Mayberry, and it's a fastball swung on and popped up on the infield. Charging in, Todd Cruz. He's there. He's got it. In the first, the Yankees, no runs, 1 hit, no errors, and 1 man left after a half an inning. The New York Yankees, nothing against right-hander Doyle Alexander, the Mariners.
Okay, so top of the first inning, he's given us a lot of information. He has set the tone. He has told us about the Yankees and their struggles and picking up John Mayberry. He has set the infield. He's set the outfield. He's given us a lot of information. And, you know, when I first watched this, I thought, man, he is just going way too fast. And then he settles in as the inning goes along. And the stage is set for what could possibly be his 300th win. I think I treat the first inning almost like an opening ceremony, especially with a potential milestone moment like this.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to really grab an audience. You know, it's the showmanship. The showmanship. He's got a lot to talk about. If you're just driving around your car and you're listening to that, you're riveted. You know, you're just riveted. And you know, he was objective to a point, but again, there was that call, that close call on the pitch, and you could hear just a little bit of his frustration that they didn't get the call, just the way a fan would of the Mariners. But he wasn't like such a huge homer that if you were a Yankee fan, you were going, oh my God, this is intolerable. I can't listen to this.
About the showmanship.
Yeah.
With the Yankees involved, it makes me think of the apocryphal Joe DiMaggio story that what if there's a fan here at the ballpark who's seeing me for the first time? And it makes me think of what if there's a listener who's listening to Dave for the first time? And that's what it's about. It's about capturing the longtime fan, like he's a part of your life. And for the first time fan, you were in because of his show, because of everything that he's putting in. His details are exceptional. There's the details on the play-by-play, but he's identifying pitches.
Yeah. And if you're blind, you're able to really watch and follow the game. That's part of it too. You know, I think Dave would have gotten a lot more national recognition if he weren't isolated up in the Pacific Northwest. If Dave Niehaus was the voice of the Cubs or the voice of the Red Sox, something like that, I think we would know him. Baseball fans and people in general would know who he is. Back in those days, CBS Radio used to do a Saturday game of the week. And they used to do a thing called the hometown inning. And they would invite the local announcer when their team was up to come and call the play-by-play. And it was really the only national attention that Dave got. And it was really kind of funny. It became a bit because Dave would go on and the inning would be 3 minutes. Okay. And I was timing it. Of course, you know, I'm doing the game on the Mariner thing. I said, okay, let's see how long Dave has. And the year before, when I was in Baltimore and my partner was Chuck Thompson, and Chuck didn't want to do it. So he let me do the hometown inning. And there was one game, we were in Fenway Park and Johnny Bench is my partner. And we score like 3 runs and there's a brawl. I'm on the air for like 35 minutes calling this inning. And so this was like like a running bit. Okay, Dave would have his inning, and he'd come back, and I go, well, Dave, 3 minutes 54 seconds. And you go, there's the pitch. And I had a brawl, Dave, when I had mine. They scored a bunch of runs, and then it's like, I said, "What'd you pay these guys? You fucking pay these guys a quarter a pitch. Just take a pitch once in a while." But Dave didn't get any kind of real national attention.
All right, let's skip ahead to the conclusion of the 300th win for Gaylord Perry.
History of the game. Does that toe tap out there on the mound before turning around, and Milbourne just staring at it to see if he can pick up Gaylord loading the ball up perhaps. Larry waving the wood back and forth. Gaylord Perry reaches into that glove. Here's the 1-2 pitch to Milbourne, and it's a fastball popped up right side. Cruz coming in. Julio calling and calling. One precious out to go. Milbourne pops to Julio Cruz, and Gaylord Perry, perspiration dropping off his nose as he receives the ball from Manny Castillo and receives a standing ovation here before almost 29,000 fans. Looks at Willie Randolph and tries to take care of the pesky little second baseman of the Yankees and go back to the clubhouse and enjoy, savor something only 14 other men have done in the history of this game. The pitch, low and outside to Willie Randolph. 1 ball and no strikes. Perry wants a new baseball, throws it in. Kenny Kaiser kind of rolls that ball around in his hand and says, no, it's no good. And it gives a new one out to Gaylord Perry. Gaylord Perry, 43 years, 8 months old, from Williamston, North Carolina. Goes into the line. The 1-0 pitch on the way now to Randolph, and it's a strike call right down the middle, 1-1. Everybody on their feet here at the Kingdom. Perry gets set to deliver the 1-1 pitch to Willie Randolph. The Graybeard into the line. The 1-1 pitch to Willie. Curve up and in. Down he goes. 2-1 the count. And it's great to have you fans around the world listening on American Forces Radio, being able to sit in on a bit of baseball history here at the Kingdom in Seattle, Washington tonight. On May the 6th, 1982, Gaylord Perry 1 out away from 300. The 2-1 pitch to Randolph. Swung on, ground ball to Cruz. This should do it. He's got it. It's over. Gaylord has 300. Everybody mobbing Gaylord Perry as he goes all the way. His teammates come out, Bud Bulling, and Gaylord Perry becomes the 15th man in baseball history to win 300 games as the Mariners beat the Yankees 7-3. My, oh my.
That's right. They used to ring some stupid bell that happily was retired when I got there.
A few notes from that. 1 precious out to go. The perspiration off his nose describes Willie Randolph as the pesky hitter and describes Gaylord Perry as the graybeard there in just those final 2-3 minutes.
Yep. If you're driving home, I guarantee you sat in the driveway and listened to the end of that game. I mean, he totally had you hooked. Yep, just great. You know, the one thing about Dave, I will say, all of that description and all of that stuff that he would pour into an inning, the one thing that he was generally remiss was the score. Okay. It was always hard to get him to do the score. And, you know, and you don't want to say to Dave Niehaus, hey, do the score, buddy, do the score. So our engineer, Kevin Kremen, came up with an ingenious idea. And he went to the salesman and we sold the score. So anytime Kevin felt that Dave needed to give the score, he handed him a card that said, and the Carrier Heating air conditioning score is Mariners 7, Yankees 3. Like, okay, thanks, got the commercial in. That's what we would do. And like Dave never figured out that I never did a Carrier score, but Dave was doing them all the time. And I don't think he ever knew that was the purpose of the Carrier heating and air conditioning score.
Jesse, what are your biggest takeaways after listening to all of these stories and all of these highlights of Dave Niehaus?
No, I'm thinking that I would like to yield my time because, Ken, at the end of each of our shows, we do get to the point where we say, okay, so what lessons can we take away from this broadcaster when we're breaking down Vin Scully or when we're breaking down Harry Carey or Tom Cheek or whomever it might be? And as you said, Dave Niehaus deserved more national attention. With Josh and I, we are examining the philosophies, the different broadcast tendencies of each of these great voices of the game. For you, for Dave Niehaus, what can broadcasters take away from and learn from to bring into their broadcast today?
I think showmanship, I think description, and humanity. There was great humanity. It was all about the players as people and where they were from, who they are. I would say that more than anything. You know, it's just not a matter of statistics and his on-base percentage, that type of thing. There's a lot of baseball announcers today. I think if you took away their computer, they couldn't call the game. And for Dave, it was the love of the sport that came through. It was just the story that was being told, and he just loved it, you know. Bonus panels, what he called extra innings. You know, I never heard Dave complain about long games. Other announcers have. It's like, God, Jesus Christ, extra innings, we got to go again. And it's like Dave was never like that. And Dave was always excited every single game. And the enthusiasm that he injected into every broadcast was the same opening day to closing day, even though there were 110 losses in between.
I think my biggest takeaway is that he's just himself. He's not trying to be.
Yeah, he's very much himself. Yeah.
He's not trying to be anybody other than Dave Niehaus. It is extremely authentic. This is who I am. I might do some things unconventionally. I might wreck my voice at times because I'm going on and on and on and on and on. He doesn't care. He is himself. And I think that's my biggest takeaway is Dave Niehaus knew who he was and wasn't trying to be anybody else.
Right. And the fans loved him. I just don't understand why teams today don't really value that, don't really look at that. And I don't think young broadcasters today even study that. And I think the listener is missing out as a result, because baseball on the radio, when done well, is an art form. It truly is an art form. And when you have a great broadcaster, it's more fun to listen to him call a game on the radio than to watch it on TV.
Well, that's why we created the show, so that we can listen, so that we can learn about the craft of play-by-play, so that we can make ourselves better and so that we can appreciate what others have done. And I had a feeling this was going to be an outstanding episode about Dave Niehaus, and I was excited to once again work with my friend and longtime partner, Ken Levine. And yeah, this is exactly why we created this, to learn and appreciate.
Well,
Ken, thank you for taking the time.
my pleasure. Like I said, it was an honor to be his partner, and I'm happy to sing his praises any place, anytime.
And Wabash Cannonball.
And Wabash Cannonball. He had a good voice too, by the way. He did a good job, better than me singing that stupid song.
For Ken Levine and for Jesse Goldberg-Strassler of the Lansing Lugnuts, I'm Josh Sushon of the Albuquerque Isotopes. Thank you for watching Crafting the Call. We'll be back again next week.